The purpose of the video is to go through the theory and research base around our topic, so urban renewal and gentrification in urban areas. This is going to guide our research and fieldwork. We're going to go out and test to see in Bowden whether what the research tells us about urban renewal and gentrification, whether that has taken place in Bowden. Familiarise yourself with the research question, pause now and digest it. And at any stage, pause the slides if you need more time with the notes. Differentiate yourselves. What's the difference between urban renewal and gentrification? So in the middle, we've got a lot of similarities. Both are occurring in post-industrial countries. So places like Australia, the US, and Europe, higher income countries. Both processes take place in underutilized sites of the city. Both involve redevelopment of the urban area and the physical renovation of housing, and both can lead to similar impacts. So once an area is renewed or redeveloped, once an area is gentrified and the housing's improved, both of those things can lead to an increase in land value. Both can lead to an increase in rent paid. As the urban environment improves and the costs of living there increase, you can also get a change in the social composition. So there's a change of who lives there. And similarly, business changes due to costs and due to the clientele that's there. The key differences, urban renewal, it's deliberately planned. So increasingly, it's the state that is directing it. So the national government, the local government is renewing inner city areas. Gentrification, conversely, more carried out by individuals. So the research tells us that it's residents moving there one by one and renovating themselves that leads to a gradual, more organic urban change. That's gentrification. So government-led, probably more rapid, versus resident-led, more gradual. Let's answer the question why we have inner city industrial areas and why we have low class residential areas in the inner city too. So let's go to the models. Let's have a look at some urban models. Burgess with the concentric zones of urban activity. The CBD, that's reserved for mainly retail or more so retail because there's high traffic there. Industry doesn't need that traffic, so it's not willing to pay the higher rents to be there. Industry, however, will surround the CBD, often because goods might be moving in and out of the CBD. Headquarters of industry may be in the CBD, so you might want to be close by. But also, there might be an assumption that ports may be at the centre of the city. So industry would want to be close to a port for transport. You can see that low-class residential areas surround. That's to give proximity to the workers. So the workers live near where they work. Hoyt's model differs. Instead of concentric rings, we've got the urban area divided into sectors. So we still have industry close to the CBD for all the previously mentioned reasons. The industry in this model follows transport lines, major lines of transport. Industry would need to be close to there for the transport of goods. Same again, we've got the low-class residential areas in proximity for workers to be close to work. Whichever model we look at, though, both can explain why the inner city contains industry and also why low-class residential areas are near industry and near the inner city. So we know why industry and low quality, low cost residential areas are in the inner city. The next stage leading to gentrification is economic changes. So the higher income countries of today that industrialized in the 1800s and the 1900s, as those countries develop, manufacturing becomes more expensive. So it's quite costly to manufacture in those countries. As a result, there's a global shift of manufacturing to lower income countries. So, a good example of this is manufacturing moving to South Korea during the 70s, 80s. Post industrial countries, they focus more on their tertiary or quaternary industries over manufacturing. So, more focus on activities that service the community and individuals. So, think things like being a doctor, being a teacher, um, taxi driver included, and quaternary is more research, information, finance, administration, those sorts of industries. So that global shift explains underutilized inner city industrial areas in higher income countries, cities. Additionally, in post industrial countries, the residents become more environmentally conscious. Economically, they're wealthy, they're comfortable, they feel that they can protest against polluting industries being in the inner city. As a result, so the inner city areas, we've got vacant industrial sites or disused industrial sites. We've got the low class housing in the inner city too. From those economic changes and the occurrence of underutilized sites in the inner city, the research base theory tells us that gentrification has a series of steps. So I'm going to go through those steps using this model, this graphic. But if you go to the site, if you go to the section on gentrification in the IA, there's a stage model, the different stages of gentrification and what happens in those, much more detailed. So in the initial stages in the inner city areas, you've got the people living there that are going to be the long-term working class residents. What will start to happen is you might get well-educated artists, graduate students who move into the areas because they're low rent, because they're probably seen as being a little bit edgy. Next in the process, you're going to get, or theory tells us, that cultural professionals might move in. So think further people involved in arts and design, etc., creative types. People with liberal, open minds, people who accept equality, etc. These people are happy to live in these low rent areas because they enjoy the diversity. So you're going to get those working class people, you're going to get creatives, you're going to get counterculture types of people. So cultural professionals move in, they want to own their own homes, and it's affordable in that inner city. They start to renovate themselves piece by piece. And so the area, the inner city area, it starts to change its identity and it starts to get seen as being trendy. So we have this discovered phase where housing quality is getting better and the culture of the place is changing too. So what starts to happen is you get wealthy people and then you get developers who catch on. They can see the popularity in the area and they start to invest. They start to purchase houses. They start to purchase land. They recognize the economic potential in that area. In the next stage, there's something of a housing boom. So the housing stock's been renovated. There are new apartments. What follows is new shops, new retail that also enters. Because of this, we start to see some gentrification type effects. So we're looking at the cost of living there increasing and the type of people that live there also changes. Okay, there's a certain wealthy people that can live there as opposed to our long-term working class and our original creatives, our original graduates. Okay, if we follow the model around, we start to look at some of the effects of the gentrification. So that's the process of gentrification happening in post-industrial countries. The research base, the theory also tells us that there are common consequences Again, the site goes through this in a bit more detail, but we can talk through a few of those impacts. So a big impact is the displacement of the long-term residents. So as the housing stock and the identity of the area, the gentrified area, as that improves, then land values increase. Real estate owners might choose, seeing the popularity of the area, they might sell their properties at profit. So then the properties for rent decrease, and the residents who can only afford to rent, they can't afford to buy, they become displaced. Also, as residents become more wealthy and the services of the area improve, the amenity of the area improve, the council might charge more for rates to look after it, to look after the area. So again, the lower socioeconomic groups, they can be displaced as it might now be unaffordable. As mentioned, the social diversity of the area may change. Additionally, rents for retailers can also increase. So long-term shops can be displaced and bigger brands might move in. And because the rents are higher, retailers may start selling commodities higher in order to compensate for those increased rents. And again, that impacts on the remaining low-income residents. There are other negative effects, check the site, but there can also be positive implications with gentrification. So let's understand what the research tells us about that. In terms of background to Bowden, have a look through this slide and fill in the gaps. There's extra research you can do to understand what land uses happen in Bowden and how that's changed over time. The key point here is that Bowden seems to be initiated as urban renewal, or most recently, urban renewal. So it's the government recognising that there's underutilised land that could be used residentially and for different reasons. Ultimately, Adelaide, it's a city that is wealthy, people own cars, and we've, as a result, suffered from urban sprawl. Bowden was seen as an opportunity to have a more condensed, concentrated population living close to the city, but also living close to public transport. So reducing Adelaide's urban sprawl and its dependence on cars. If we return now to the research question, we can see the purpose of the IA and the purpose of our fieldwork. So what we're looking for is we want to observe, or we want to work out, well, has urban renewal or gentrification taken place in Bowden? And if it's urban renewal, we want to observe what have authorities and planners done, or what have they done to attempt to regenerate the area? We're interested in whether, if urban renewal has taken place and the housing stock has improved, has this led to gentrification effects that the research tells us occur? So is Bowden experiencing the effects of gentrification as a result of redevelopment? So we're interested in things like, after the redevelopment, what's happened to the land values now in Bowden? What's happened to the rents and the council rates that are getting charged? What's happened to the composition of residents? Is it much more homogenous? What types of people are living there now? What's happened to the long-term residents and how do they feel about the changes? And what's happened with retail? Has retail changed? Has the price of commodities changed as well? So the video has tried to explain and clarify what's urban renewal, what's gentrification. It's talked about the processes of gentrification and the impacts of gentrification. And we know that we want to test to see what the effects of urban renewal and gentrification perhaps have been in Bowden. The end of the video is going to have a series of questions just to check your understanding. So work your way through them, refer back to the website if you need further support, and we'll go from there. Okay, thank you.